What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I do want to look at the new Audi S1 E-Tron Quattro. This car, I would say, is probably going to be one of the craziest looking things I have ever seen. And I have to admit, after driving it, how can I not break this pole down? Okay. I have to admit though, after driving this vehicle, it's probably one of the coolest looking cars in Motorfest right now. Like, it not only is going to be an insane looking vehicle, but my goodness, it's also in the drift class. And I have to admit, for being an all-wheel drive electric vehicle, this thing absolutely rips. Now, I do have to admit though, is it going to be my favorite vehicle over the Hoonitron? That I'm probably going to have to say no, but the acceleration on this vehicle is absolutely insane. Like, you barely hit the throttle. Of course, this thing is maxed out, by the way. It really is insane how this car not only does turn insanely well similar to the Hoonicorn, but my goodness, you can also drift it around the corners. Basically with like no effort whatsoever, like I am barely even trying. And of course with this car, by the way, you also do not have to shift. I mean, it is, going to be an electric vehicle, so I do not know of any EVs at the moment that do actually shift with like actual gears, but I would not doubt if that is most likely going to be a thing. And of course it is going to have that signature like spaceship sound to it, similar to like, I guess it is like a Taycan Turbo S. You can also probably add like a V8 engine sound to this car and most likely make it sound crazy. And of course unlocking the one from the actual playlist is probably going to be the Hoonicorn sound. Imagine that being in this car, like that sound pumping out of this, but then again that is most likely, oh, I missed my turn. I need to go back this way. That road looks a lot more fun than the other one, so let's go here. Now, I have to admit, guys, I do know a lot of people have been insanely mixed on the fact that these are indeed only drift class vehicles. And the second I actually drove this car in that one event in the playlist, I was like, you know what? This thing is going to be an insanely fun drift class car. And guys, I have to admit, even to this day when driving it pretty often, it really is going to be an insanely stable vehicle for what it is. I did mention in the Hoonicorn video, by the way, that yeah, the Crew 2 obviously had drift cars as well. The biggest issue with the cars in that game is they were not that stable, especially going around like 160 miles an hour. The cars would be like twitchy, so I do feel like that's why they most likely added this car into the drift class with like the Hoonicorn, because these cars actually handle so much better now compared to before. And I really would say, guys, having a nice mix of grip like this with a car that you can actually like fling around really is going to make this thing a lot more fun to actually use. Like, not even trying right now, you can obviously like go as fast as you want. So I'll do that right now in this straightaway. Which, by the way, as I did mention before, this car is pretty dang quick, doing 224 miles an hour, making it around 10 to maybe 13 miles per hour slower than many of the Tier 2 vehicles in this game. So it is definitely going to be pretty dang fast for that matter. And at least that way you can also mess around with it, but of course race it in different events and easily go as fast as you possibly want. But on the flip side of that, with something like the e-tron here, you can indeed race it. And of course, most likely handle around most corners like you would with a different car. And also on the flip side, you can indeed drift this thing around. So I really do feel like it's going to be an absolute win. So I did want to show a few things here in the first-person view of the lovely Audi S1. I have to admit, by the way, I'm not the biggest fan of this thing in first-person view, but that is most likely going to not even be close to something like the Hoonicorn. Now, I do have to admit, though, I do think the S1 Hoonitron screen thingy there is pretty dope. You also have like an RPM reader for this, and obviously it's only in first gear. And of course reverse there because, it doesn't have more than one gear. And then it's also going to be at a 97% charge there. At least that's what it's saying, so maybe that's correct. And of course the button in this vehicle is indeed going to be drive, neutral, and then reverse. I did actually watch a video recently with KenBlock talking about this, so what's kind of insane, guys, I do know most EVs can be insanely quick in reverse. This car you can actually go into drive and then basically press that and then go back into reverse that way. And of course that will allow you to be much faster in different entries and stuff like that. One of my favorite things ever was definitely the thing that was indeed in Las Vegas. That was like one of the craziest turns I've ever seen in my life with the lovely e-tron here. And of course KenBlock was indeed driving the car then. That was absolutely insane. Now I did actually want to spawn over to the playground here and talk about this car a bit more. Now I do have to say, guys, I'm sure a lot of players are most likely going to run the Hoonicorn, which, trust me, I can definitely see why that is going to be a thing. But if you have not driven the e-tron, I would definitely recommend it. As far as I do know, this vehicle is indeed purchasable in the store. At least for me it was. I think it was like 400,000 or 500,000 or something like that. Might have been a little less. but I wouldn't say it's going to be all that expensive, especially because, you know, it is a new vehicle, and it's going to be insanely unique for that matter in basically anything. And one thing I also have to admit, by the way, guys, drifting around in this game like this with the e-tron here really is going to blow my mind how hard it actually is to do something like this, and the amount of skill plus also like the driving experience you must have to do so. I really have to give it to all of the people that actually race. Like, it is not going to be an easy thing to do at all. Now, I have to admit something about this e-tron though. Yes, I really do like this thing, but my goodness, I probably like the Hoonitron more. And I do want to explain why. So the first thing is, yes, this thing is going to be quick. And one thing about this car is you obviously do not have to shift it, which I would say a lot of people might not be like the biggest fan of. And with this thing being an EV, it is indeed going to have a crazy amount of torque. So it is probably going to get up insanely quick compared to basically everything else. But one thing I did notice about the Hoonicorn compared to this though is probably going to be like the character of it. The main reason I say that though is probably going to come down to the fact of how that car does feel with like shifting through the gears and like hearing the turbo like flutter. I really like the way that car also feels as well compared to the e-tron, but I have to admit guys, both cars are going to be equally as fun, and they are definitely going to be like different types of experiences. But at the same time though, I really do think it is most likely going to come down to like a preference thing, because each vehicle is going to be different in their own way. And I would say if you actually like something like the e-tron, you would most likely like the Hoonicorn, and vice versa, I guess you could say for the most part. But I have to admit, guys, I do know many players are probably going to be mixed on buying the e-tron. I have to admit, if you do have the extra money on here, definitely pick this thing up. And one of my favorite things about this car is easily going to come down to the fact that not only can you actually drift this car around with ease, which by the way, I've been doing this entire session without even messing with my pro settings. Like, it's going to be that easy to actually drift this car around. And if you actually did want to drive this car like a regular vehicle, like a Street Tier 2, you can easily race the S1 E-Tron in basically any of the main events in the game similar to the Hoonicorn, and easily compete in them, guys, with basically no issues. Sure, these Street Tier 2 vehicles might be quicker in some way, like maybe hitting like 220, but I really do think most of those set events are probably not going to be nearly as bad as before. And that's probably what's going to make the e-tron so much fun to use, is the fact that yes, you can easily run this car in basically any of the main events. And I would say, guys, a lot of players most likely were not happy that these are indeed drift cars, but I do feel like the more people actually use them, they're probably going to enjoy them a lot more, and they really are going to see why they are actually so good in that said class. Like, yes, they are going to be drift class vehicles, so you can drift them basically everywhere. Overall, though, I would say the e-tron is probably going to be worth every bit of it if you guys do want to buy a car to basically mess around with. And if you are looking for something that you can drift but also race in different events, this is going to be a great option similar to the Hoonicorn. I would probably say, once again, I would probably pick like the Hoonicorn over this, but I will most likely be messing around with both of these vehicles a lot more often, especially when going after many of these said challenges, which, by the way, I will be doing the challenge video in the coming days as well, so do stay tuned for that. I would also like to know what you guys think about the e-tron in the comments below, and if you did have to pick one vehicle, would you pick the e-tron or the Hoonicorn?